Have you ever cried in secret with a wet pillow, trying to appear strong, but inside feeling like no one saw you? Have you ever had that feeling of fighting alone, as if not even God was listening? What if I told you that precisely in these moments when tears fall in silence, Jesus is talking to you, but maybe you haven't figured it out yet? This video is no longer content about faith. It's a call straight to your heart, a revelation that could change the way you see pain. Because there is a meaning to all of this. There is a voice, and it's trying to reach you right now. When you watch until the end, you will discover how Jesus even uses your crying as language. You will understand what he wants to tell you when everything seems hopeless, and how this can bring peace, strength, and direction for your life. And now, I want to give you a challenge. If you've ever experienced something like this, if you've ever felt this silent pain, comment below, "I've cried like this." Let's show that we are not alone on this journey. And tell us where you're watching from. We want to know how far this message is getting. Oh, and if this topic touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel, because here, each video is an invitation for your soul to breathe again. Are you ready to hear what Jesus wants to tell you when no one else seems to hear you? So stay with me until the end. What will you discover can change everything? You know that moment when you pray, cry out, pour yourself out before God, and all you get in return is silence? There is no answer, there is no signal, there is no direction, just the echo of your own pain resonating inside your chest. It's like talking to an invisible wall, and the more you insist, the more it seems like the sky closes. Clara felt it. Young woman with sincere faith, involved in church, sang praise, gave Bible studies, was known for her smile and joy. But when the parents announced their divorce, the ground opened beneath their feet. She prayed, fasted, asked God to restore her family. But the days passed, the fights increased, the bags were packed, and the silence remained. God did not speak, God did not appear. God didn't stop it. This is where many get lost. When what was once faith turns into confusion, when what once was certainty turns into doubt. What to do when the one you believe in doesn't answer you? Has he abandoned you? Has your prayer not been heard? Could it be that the problem lies with you? This is where the enemy whispers, trying to convince you that you are alone, that God has turned his back, that he doesn't care. But is that really it? The truth is that God is not absent, but he is not our servant either. It doesn't respond to commands or follow our deadlines. Sometimes God's silence is not punishment, it's an invitation. Invitation to dive deeper, to learn to trust beyond what we see, to develop a faith that does not depend on an immediate response, but on an eternal certainty. He is there, even silent, even when you don't see it, even when you don't understand. Job also experienced this. Man of integrity, God-fearing, faithful, he lost children, health, wealth, and the sky was silent. He looked for God everywhere, in the east, in the west, and nothing. No sound, no response. But even so, he declared, "But he knows my way. By testing me, I will come out like gold." Job 23:10. It's easy to trust when everything is fine. It's hard to believe when everything falls apart. When prayers don't seem to go beyond the ceiling, that's when faith begins to be refined. Because true faith is not supported by emotions, it is sustained by conviction. Faith is not feeling, it's deciding to trust, even without understanding, even without listening, even without seeing it. How many times have you felt like Clara? Sitting on the edge of the bed, wondering why God doesn't speak, feeling invisible, ignored, as if your pain was too small to be noticed by the creator of the universe. But what if I told you that this silence is not absence? What if it is precisely in this void that he is acting most? God's silence teaches. It reveals what is inside us. It exposes how much we want to control everything. He brings us face to face with our weaknesses, and shows us that we don't have all the answers, but we can trust those who do. It forces us to stop, looking inside, discovering that we depend on Him more than we imagined. Remember when you were a kid and your dad was around without even speaking? Just His presence gave you security. So it is with God. He may be silent, but He is present. It may not respond now, but it is working. His silence is not contempt, it's strategy. And sometimes it is in the silence that He speaks most, because He forces us to listen to what really matters. And in that silence, He is often preparing us for something greater. Clara did not see the restoration of the family she asked for, but she saw something even deeper. She discovered that her faith was not based on blessings, but on presence. That even without an answer she could trust, and that sometimes the greatest miracle is not the change around, but the transformation within. You may be experiencing this silence right now, but don't despair. The absence of response is not the absence of love. It is in this silence that He strengthens its structure. This is where He builds the foundation that will support the response that is yet to come. If you remain, you will discover that even in silence, He remains God. And that's enough. There are times when the pain is so deep that we can't even pray. The throat stops, the mind feels heavy, and all we can do is cry. The words disappear, and the only sound that comes out is the sob. It seems little, but to God that's all. Tears have a voice. They speak of what the mouth cannot express. Erica discovered this when, after losing her baby in the 30th week of pregnancy, she entered a void where no prayer seemed to fit. She looked at the empty crib, sat on the floor of the room and just cried. Her friends said she needed to react, that she needed to strengthen herself, but only she knew how much it hurt. Just her and God. What no one saw was that each tear that fell was a prayer, a silent but powerful cry. Heaven does not need words to understand the soul. And God, in His infinite compassion, collects each tear as a living testimony of what we feel. Psalm 56:8 reminds us of this. You have numbered my afflictions, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Yes, they are, and they are not ignored. No tear that falls from a child of God is wasted. They are registered, they have value. In a world that tells you to swallow your tears, God invites you to pour everything out before Him. What for many is weakness, for God is surrender, and where there is surrender, there is room for healing. Jesus wept. This in itself teaches us a lot. He, the Son of God, the Savior of the world, did not contain His tears when faced with the pain of a friend. When He saw Mary and Martha weeping over the death of Lazarus, Jesus was deeply moved. He felt their pain, He cared, and He cried with them. John 11:35 sums it up in depth. Jesus wept. This is one of the shortest passages in the Bible, but perhaps one of the most profound, because it shows that God understands our pain, not from afar, but from within. He enters into the pain with us. He is not indifferent to our suffering. On the contrary, He participates. He feels. Many people believe that faith is synonymous with unshakable strength, but true faith also includes tears. Believing is not smiling all the time. It's about continuing to trust even when everything falls apart. Tears do not nullify faith. They prove that you keep fighting even without having all the answers. They show that your heart is still beating even though it is injured. Think about how many times you cried alone, in the bathroom, in the bedroom, on the dark sidewalk. How many times have your chest felt tight, as if the entire world was crushing your soul? Maybe no one noticed. Maybe you never told anyone, but God saw. God was there. He was there when you held back crying in front of your children, when He lay down and couldn't sleep because He thought so much, when He screamed silently, His eyes wet. He was present. Silent, yes, but present. He saw, and more than that, He felt it with you. Tears connect us with humanity and bring us closer to God's mercy. Whoever cries before God does not leave the same way. There is an invisible but powerful exchange. You deliver pain, he returns comfort. You surrender weakness, he offers strength. You deliver despair, he brings hope. Erica didn't forget her baby. The pain continues in a way. But today, she cares for other grieving mothers. She speaks of God's love with authority because she knows the taste of crying. Know the silence and know the embrace of heaven that comes after. His pain became a ministry. Your tears turned to seeds, and where once there was only loss, today there is purpose. Don't underestimate your tears. Don't try to hide them from God. He already knows your heart. He understands every emotion, every memory, every detail of your pain. And he is ready to collect everything, transform everything, heal everything. If you feel like you can't pray, cry. God will understand. Cry in his presence. Because when you cry to God, you are praying with your soul, and this he never ignores. And when you cry to God, you are not alone. There is an entire sky surrounding you, angels who watch you, a promise that is still being fulfilled, and a Father who never abandoned you. He does not reject a broken heart. He moves towards your crying, not because you have the right words, but because you have a sincere heart. So, allow yourself to feel. Don't repress your pain before him. If necessary, cry until you have no strength left. And when you don't know what to say, just stay there, in presence. Because God doesn't just respond with words. Sometimes he responds with peace, with rest, with presence, and that's all you need today. Take a deep breath. He's here. He's there. You don't need to explain yourself. He already understood, he already accepted, and he has already started to act, even if you don't see it yet. Don't be ashamed to cry in the presence of the Father. For whoever cries before him will always be comforted. And when this comfort comes, you will understand that no tears were in vain. They were all seeds, all were noted, and they will all be transformed into a living testimony of God's faithfulness. God's voice does not always come as we expect. She doesn't scream, don't interrupt. And often, it doesn't come the way we imagine. When everything is disorganized, when chaos sets in, that's precisely when his voice echoes most accurately. But you need to be careful, because he speaks in whispers that only the broken heart can hear. Layla lived on the edge. After years of trying to deal with depression alone, without support, without understanding, she decided it was no longer worth it. That night, on the way to a bridge, she stopped at a random bus stop, as if waiting for some confirmation of what she was about to do. The driver's radio played low, almost imperceptibly, but one phrase caught his attention. God still has plans for you. It was enough to make her give up. It seemed small, but it was huge. In that detail, God cried out in silence. The phrase wasn't directed at her, but it was for her. The driver didn't even notice, but she knew. God had spoken. We often expect God to come with thunder, spectacular signs, or grandiose revelations, but he specializes in details. Your voice reveals itself in subtle ways, in a song, in a message, in a friendly word, or even in the silence that forces us to reflect. In 1 Kings 19, God was not in the mighty wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but it came in a soft whisper. This is how Elijah recognized him. God speaks differently because he knows the human soul. He knows how to get to you. He knows how your mind works, what wounds you carry, what memories still hurt. And that's why he doesn't force entry. He respects your time, but he always talks, always achieves. Sometimes you are so immersed in pain that you don't notice the signs. Answered prayer does not come as you imagined. Healing comes in stages. The answer reveals itself in the process, but she comes because God does not remain silent forever. It reveals itself in what many call coincidence, but you know it's not. Have you ever heard God's voice in the midst of chaos? Have you ever felt like a word at the right time was more than coincidence? Maybe it was on a bus, like Layla. Maybe in a simple conversation with someone who didn't even know what you were going through. Maybe in a song. maybe in a verse that appeared on your cell phone feed exactly when your heart was thinking about giving up. This is no coincidence. It's careful, it's direction. God moves out of love, and whoever loves speaks. He does not leave his children helpless. He uses even the noise of chaos to bring clarity to the soul. But to listen, you have to be silent inside. Calm the heart. Stop for a moment. And then, in the midst of the storm, hear, "It's me, don't be afraid." Jesus said this to his disciples in the midst of a raging sea. They thought it was a ghost, but it was him. Walking above the chaos, above the waves, above fear, his voice soothes. Even if circumstances don't change, something inside you changes when he speaks. The heart slows down, the mind quiets down, the soul recognizes God is here. You may be looking for answers, but perhaps what you need now is not an immediate solution, but rather a sign that you are not alone. This sign could be all around you right now. It could be this message, it could be this phrase, it could be the inexplicable peace you feel, even for no apparent reason. And you know what's most beautiful about this? God speaks to you because he loves you. He doesn't need to prove anything, but he still reveals himself. He has no obligation, but he still approaches, because he is the Father. And parents talk to their children, especially when children cry. So if you're in the middle of the chaos, listen up. It will not always be an audible voice. Maybe it's just a feeling, a serene certainty, a verse that repeats itself, a good memory that emerges without explanation. All of this could be the way God chose to reach you right now. And if you ask, but is it really him? Observe the effect. God's voice brings peace. She doesn't oppress, she consoles, she guides, she doesn't confuse, she frees. God has not lost his voice, and he has not forgotten your name. It may seem like everything is out of control, but he still has control of everything, and he keeps talking, even when the world is screaming. Now take a deep breath. Silence the heart, because he may be whispering right now, "I'm here, I always have been, you've never been alone." And perhaps this phrase, which now echoes within you, is exactly what your heart needed to hear. Not because someone wrote it with specific intention, but because God knows the right time to reach your soul. It moves the invisible to remind you that you are still loved, still seen, still called by name. When everything is confusing, remember this. God's voice doesn't have to be loud to be clear. It just needs to be heard with the heart. Trust this voice that brings life. Even if everything around seems like noise, he continues to whisper hope within you. If this message truly spoke to you, if you recognize that even in silence God was by your side, comment now, "I wasn't alone." We at the channel will leave a like on your comment as a sign that we read, prayed for you, and are on this journey of faith together. Your testimony can inspire other lives, so write with an open heart. And stay here with me, because what comes next may be exactly what your heart has been seeking. In the next minute, you can see the pain with new eyes, and that can transform everything. Faith is a powerful word, but when she is confronted with pain, everything changes. It's easy to say, "I believe," when life is in order. When the bills are paid, your health is intact and your dreams are coming true. But what happens when everything falls apart? When the diagnosis arrives, when the door closes, when the crying seems to have no end? This is where faith stops being theory and becomes choice. Choose to continue even without understanding. Tatiana was an active woman in the church. He sang in praise, led cells, had a servant heart. She and her husband had been waiting for a child for years. Finally, the good news came. Pregnancy confirmed. Months of joy, plans, and expectations. But in the 6th month, she lost the baby. No explanation, no warning. What was a promise turned into mourning, and the faith she had turned into questioning. She cried, very. And what hurt most was feeling that even though I was faithful, praying, fasting, serving, it still happened. She said, "God, I did everything right. Why?" But the sky didn't seem to respond. The void was taking up space. The heart hardened, and for the first time in years she thought about giving up. It is at this point that many believe they have lost faith. But actually, that's where it starts, because true faith is not born on the stage of celebration, but behind the scenes of pain, when everything seems meaningless, and yet you say, "I still trust." This is faith, believing without seeing, walking without a map. Continue even when injured. Hebrews 11 tells of men and women who believed but did not receive all they expected. And yet they were considered heroes of the faith, because it is not achievement that defines faith. It's permanence. It's about continuing even when everything tells you to stop. Tatian decided to stay. Little by little, he began to sing again. The voice trembled. His eyes were still filling with tears, but she sang, and each note was like a thread of hope being rebuilt. One day, she said, "I don't understand, but I choose to trust, because my God is not only God when everything is going well, He is God even in the midst of grief." This is one of the most powerful statements anyone can make. Trust even without answers. This doesn't mean you ignore the pain. It means you decide to look beyond it. It means you are willing to step forward in faith, not because of how you feel, but because of who God is. Habakkuk said, "Even if the fig tree does not blossom, I will rejoice in the Lord." This is mature faith, a faith that has already learned that the ground can dry up, but the source cannot, that circumstances may change, but God remains the same. Have you ever been to this place? Where everything you expected didn't happen? Where did prayers seem to have no effect? Where logic did not accompany faith? If you've been through this, or if you're going through it now, know you're not losing faith. It is being taken to a deeper level. You are learning to trust with your eyes closed, with your heart open, with your soul surrendered. It's easy to follow when everything makes sense, but there is glory in continuing when you do nothing. God values this perseverance. He sees the internal struggle. He hears the muffled clamor, and He honors silent faithfulness. Tatian, years later, has not forgotten her loss, but she understood that her pain was not in vain. Today, she welcomes other women who have gone through the same thing. Your praise carries a different weight, a depth that only pain polishes. Your faith is no longer one that asks for signs. It's the one that continues even without them, and that is rare and precious. Maybe you're at a point where everything inside you wants to stop, to give up, close the Bible, stop praying because you feel that faith no longer responds. But what if this feeling is a sign that it's time to grow up, of leaving emotional faith and entering unshakable faith? The pain matures, she teaches. It cleans what is superficial, it deepens roots, and everything that has deep roots resists the storm. What God is building in you now is not apparent, but it is eternal. You are not alone in this process. Many have already gone through this dark tunnel, and everyone who trusted came out on the other side stronger, more sensitive, more human, and closer to God. So don't hide your pain, take her to God. With all the tears, with all the whys, with all the confusion, He does not reject sincere hearts. He doesn't shy away from honest questions. He does not demand strength, He offers it. And at the right time, you will look back and realize, my faith didn't make me escape the pain, but it made me go through it without losing who I am. And when that day comes, you will no longer be the same. You will be firmer, more full of grace, more aware of the God who sustained you in silence. Keep walking even with small steps, even without understanding everything. Because at the end of the road, you will realize that the time of pain was also the time of construction, and everything that God builds, He sustains. Pain has many forms. Some scream loudly, others are silent, hidden behind a smile, buried so deep that we don't even know how to name them. These pains are dangerous because they don't see each other, but they corrode. And one day, if they are not treated, they explode. Therefore, God does not just want to heal what the eyes see, He wants to achieve what no one else can see. He wants to heal from within. Rogerio grew up in a Christian home, but he always carried a silent guilt. In his youth, he made mistakes that separated him from the church and mainly from himself. He tried to get back on his feet several times, but deep down, he believed he would never be worthy again. Whenever he prayed, an inner voice reminded him of the past. Whenever someone praised him, he thought, if they knew who I was, they wouldn't be saying that. On the outside, Rogerio was fine. He worked, attended church again, served as best he could. But inside, there was a guilt that weighed every day. Until one day at a vigil, he heard a sermon about forgiveness. Not the forgiveness we give to others, but the forgiveness we need to give ourselves. That dismantled his defenses. For the first time he cried, not asking for blessings, but for deliverance. He cried like someone who could no longer carry himself. It was there that his inner healing began, and it wasn't instantaneous. The soul does not heal overnight. Healing is not magic. It's process. It's a walk. It's daily delivery. And God respects this time. He doesn't press. He follows. He understands. Because He knows that there are pains that only reveal themselves when we are ready to face them. Jesus didn't just come to heal the blind, the paralyzed, the leper. He came to restore the broken within. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. Luke 4:18. That is a living promise, an ongoing mission, a reality available to you. How many things have you carried alone? How many memories do you hide, thinking you've already forgotten? But every now and then, they come back. In dreams, in triggers, in unexpected reactions. You close yourself off, isolate yourself, harden yourself, not because He wants to, but because He is hurt. And a wounded heart reacts by trying to protect itself. But Jesus didn't come to accuse you. He came to set you free. He will not open your wounds with violence, will play with compassion. Go listen to your outburst, will welcome your pain, and it will walk with you in this process. He's in no rush, but He also won't leave you in the same place. Inner healing begins when we stop hiding, when we stop pretending everything is okay, when we undress ourselves before God, without masks, without speeches, without trying to appear strong. Because there, in the deepest weakness, is where God's grace pours out most powerfully. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever had that moment when everything falls apart inside and it feels like you can't stand it? And yet, after crying, comes peace, a feeling that something has been taken away, as if a weight were lifted. This is the touch of God. It is the beginning of the restoration. Rogerio didn't become another person overnight, but he began to look at himself with different eyes, understanding that his past did not define him, that repentance was real, and that God's grace was greater than any mistake made. He began to accept God's forgiveness, and little by little he began to forgive himself, and that changed everything. He became lighter, more affordable, more loving towards others. Because whoever is healed on the inside, healing overflows on the outside. Today, he helps young people in similar situations, not as someone who points the finger, but as someone who extends their hand. Maybe you are living in that time right now, the time of inner confrontation, where God is not just opening external doors, but moving the windows of the soul. He wants to clean up what has accumulated. You want to address what was ignored, because He knows you can't move forward lightly, carrying invisible weights. You may be fine on the outside, but God wants to align you on the inside. He wants to restore you completely. He wants to show you that there is no guilt that His love cannot erase, that there is no shame that His grace does not cover, that there is no pain that His touch cannot reach. And when this healing begins, everything changes. The way you see yourself, the way you see others, the way you see life, The look changes, the heart changes, the soul breathes, and where there was once weight, now there is freedom. And this freedom is the beginning of a new journey, a life with fewer masks and more truth, where you no longer need to prove anything to anyone because you know who you are in God, where the past no longer dictates your steps and the future is no longer a reason to fear, where the present is lived with peace because the soul has been touched. And that touch, when it comes from Jesus, is definitive. He doesn't just heal, it transforms. There are pains that seem to have no purpose, tears that flow without explanation. We ask why, wait for answers that don't come, and feel overwhelmed by suffering that seems useless. But there comes a moment, and it does, when we look back and realize every tear was a seed. Every pain was soil being prepared, each fall a starting point for something we couldn't imagine. Carolina lived it. At 24 years old, recently married, she discovered that her husband was a drug addict. At first, he tried to deny it, then he tried to hide it, and finally, he tried to save. She spent nights awake, monitoring hospitalizations, lying to her parents, holding a ruined house with her own hands. I prayed, fasted, but nothing seemed to change. He relapsed, promised. I relapsed again. Until one day he left, and she was left with the pieces. For months, Carolina felt embarrassed. I carried the pain in silence. I was ashamed to admit what I had experienced. She felt used, discarded, empty. I went to church, but with a bitter heart. People asked about him and she just smiled. Few knew what was going on inside, but God knew. And it was in this silence, in this hiding place of pain, that the Holy Spirit began to act. First in her heart, then in your words, and then at a retreat, she was invited at the last minute to give a brief testimony, reluctant, but he accepted, and for the first time she told. She said it without makeup, without flourishes. She told how it hurt, how humiliating it was, how alone she felt. But she also told how God sustained her, how he found strength where there was nothing else, how he went through everything and remained standing. In the end, many women sought her out, women who also cried alone. That hid abusive relationships, family addictions, unresolved crises, women who, upon listening to Carolina, understood that they were not alone. And that day, Carolina understood. Her pain had become a ministry. Did she still feel the pain? Yes. Did you still remember? Yes. But now there was a sense. Her story was healing others. What the enemy tried to use to silence, God now used to free. The Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 1:4 that God comforts us in all our troubles, so that with the comfort we receive from God, we can comfort those who are in trouble. This is powerful, because it shows that our pain is never in vain. She has destiny, she has a mission. Have you ever thought that perhaps your greatest wound is the exact point from which God wants to speak to the world? That what you thought was your shame can be your platform for compassion. God turns tears into testimonies. He writes stories with ink of suffering, but he signs them with grace. Carolina started a support group for women facing problems at home. Today, they meet weekly to pray, share, and grow together. And she says, I never chose to live what I lived. But today I understand that nothing was wasted. God made me useful precisely in the place where I felt most useless. This is one of the greatest beauties of the gospel. He doesn't erase his past, he redeems. He doesn't pretend you didn't cry. He uses every tear as an argument for authority. You speak with weight because you know what you say. You embrace it with empathy because you felt it on your skin. You serve with purpose because you have been through the valley. Maybe you think nothing makes sense, that everything was in vain, that you only accumulated pain. But wait. Sowing time is silent. The soil looks dead, but there are seeds that grow in silence. And when they sprout, they transform deserts into gardens. God is an expert in this. in transforming chaos into a mission, in making crying the language of consolation, in lifting from the ground those who had already buried themselves alive in guilt and pain, and more, using them to lift others. You may feel like you're not ready yet, but whoever decides this is God. If He called you, it's because He knows that you carry something that the world needs. And that something often was born from your greatest pain. Don't hide your story. Don't silence your process. Someone, somewhere, is praying for an answer, and that answer may be what you experienced. It could be the overcoming that you try to hide today. It could be the scar that you hide, but that carries healing to another heart. Tears are not the end. They are the beginning. Every drop that fell could one day turn into words of healing, in true embrace, in testimony that crosses crowds. You are not just someone who cried. You are someone who survived. And if it survived, it's because it still has a mission. And this mission is not about perfection. It's about availability. It does not need to be completely cured to start serving. Sometimes it is in the midst of rebuilding that you become the answer for others. It is on this path that God transforms His story into living hope for those who are still learning to walk. And when that happens, even suffering finds its eternal purpose. We have reached the end of this journey, but perhaps you feel like something is just beginning within you. And this feeling is not for nothing. Throughout this video, we talk about tears, silence, pain, but we also talk about presence, consolation, transformation. With each story, each word, a new seed was planted in your heart. Remember for a moment, you have discovered that God's silence is not absence, but an invitation to trust more deeply. He learned that even the loneliest cry is heard by heaven, that there is a God who collects tears and responds with comfort. He saw that there are voices that arise in the chaos, and that sometimes the greatest healing is not on the outside, but on the inside. You followed real stories like Clara, Erica, Samuel, Tatiana, Rogerio, and Carolina, people who were broken, yes, but were also rebuilt. And in the end, each of them proved, God does not waste pain. Now look at your own life. How many times did you think you couldn't handle it? How many times have you hidden your tears for fear of appearing weak? How many times have you thought your suffering was invisible? But look at where you are now. You've come this far. Are you listening to this? He has an open heart, and that says a lot about who you are. You are not just anyone. You are not just another person in the crowd. You are the one who continues, who chooses to believe even when everything says to give up. And do you know what that means? That you are part of a select group, the group of those who decide not just to survive, but to live with purpose. People who transform pain into ministry, who doesn't wait to be perfect to serve, who understands that each wound can be a healing channel for another heart. So now it's up to you. If you saw yourself in these stories, if something spoke strongly to your soul, then declare it here in the comments with faith and conviction. I am living proof that God transforms pain into purpose. This sentence isn't just a comment, it's a commitment. A sign to yourself and others that your story has value, your journey has impact, and you are ready to live what God has for you. And we, at the channel, will leave a like on your comment as recognition. Because whoever comments on this takes a stand. Whoever takes a stand transforms, and whoever transforms leaves a mark. Oh, and take the opportunity now to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and continue with us. Here, each video is an extension of this journey, a compass for cloudy days, a breath of God for your soul. And now, answer me here honestly. What was the code that turned the key inside you? Comment below. We want to know which part spoke most to your heart. And if this video reached you, share it with as many people as possible. Be generous. Because in the same way that this message found you, it can be an answer for those who are already at their limit. And be careful. The 2 videos that are now appearing on your screen are not there by chance. One of them will teach you how to hear God's voice more clearly. The other will show you how to overcome the darkest days with faith. Watch them both. Each of them is part of this transformation that has already begun. You didn't watch this video by chance. You have been chosen. Now decide, will it stop here or will it continue to grow? Don't minimize what you feel right now. That restlessness inside is the Holy Spirit awakening you. When you feel this mixture of relief, clarity, and momentum, it is because God is calling you to the next level. To live a faith that is not shallow, that does not depend on the scenario, but that is firm on the rock. A faith that turns into a legacy. And a legacy is not built with just nice words. It is born from firm attitudes. And your attitude begins now, with a comment, with an inscription, with a simple, "I am here, God." Because sometimes all heaven waits is one step, and the rest He does. You have a story that is still being written, and each page turned with courage brings you closer to your purpose. Every tear welcomed, every pain healed, every memory redeemed. All of this will take you closer to who God called you to be. Don't stop. Don't hide. Don't settle for a silent faith when God has called you to live a faith that moves, that proclaims, that transforms environments. Continue, because the next chapters could be the most beautiful of your life. So once again, say it out loud or write in the comments. With faith, with boldness, with identity. I am living proof that God transforms pain into purpose. And if it's true, this will be just the beginning of its most significant turnaround.